Hey parents, let's talk about one of the most challenging phases of parenting that almost everyone goes through. Your sweet, compliant child suddenly becomes a walking contradiction machine. They say no to everything: getting dressed, eating breakfast, brushing teeth, going to bed. They say no before you've even finished asking the question. They say no to things they usually love doing. Sometimes it feels like no has become their favorite word, and you're left wondering if you're raising a future rebel or if you've somehow lost all authority as a parent. If this sounds familiar, I want you to take a deep breath and hear what Donald Winnicott discovered about this phase. He found that when children go through periods of constant opposition, when no seems to be their automatic response to everything, they're not just being difficult or testing your limits. They're actually doing some of the most important developmental work of their entire childhood. Winnicott called this phase healthy opposition, and he believed it was absolutely crucial for children's emotional and psychological development. When your child says no to you, they're not rejecting you or your relationship. They're actually practicing something essential. They're learning that they're a separate person with their own thoughts, feelings, and preferences. Let me explain what this looks like from your child's developmental perspective. For the first years of their life, your child's identity was almost completely merged with yours. They needed you for everything: food, comfort, safety, entertainment. In many ways, they didn't really understand where you ended and they began. But as they grow and develop, they start to realize something both exciting and terrifying. They're actually their own person. They have their own thoughts, their own preferences, their own will. This realization is the foundation of all healthy psychological development, but it's also incredibly overwhelming for a young mind to process. Saying no becomes your child's way of practicing this newfound sense of self. Every time they refuse your request, every time they assert their own preferences against yours, they're essentially saying, I am me, and you are you. And I have the right to have different opinions and make different choices. This might sound like a recipe for chaos, and I know it can feel that way when you're living through it. But Winnicott understood that this opposition phase is actually a sign that your child feels safe enough in your relationship to start individuating. They trust that you'll still love them even when they disagree with you, even when they're difficult, even when they make choices you don't approve of. Think about it this way: children who don't feel secure in their primary relationships often become overly compliant. They learn to suppress their own opinions and preferences because they're terrified of losing their parents' love. While this might seem easier to live with, it actually sets children up for serious problems later in life, including difficulty making decisions, poor boundaries in relationships, and struggles with self-esteem. Your child who's constantly saying no is actually demonstrating emotional health and security. They're showing you that they feel safe enough to be their authentic self, even when that self disagrees with you. Now, Winnicott also understood that there are different types of no phases, and it's important for parents to recognize the difference. There's healthy developmental opposition, which usually happens around certain predictable ages, typically around 18 months to 3 years, and then again during adolescence. This type of opposition is generally focused on autonomy and identity development, but there's also what Winnicott called defensive opposition, which can happen when a child feels overwhelmed, unsafe, or misunderstood. This type of opposition often has a different quality. It might be more intense, more persistent, or accompanied by other signs of distress like sleep problems, regression in other areas, or unusual clinginess. Learning to distinguish between these two types of opposition can help you respond more appropriately. Healthy developmental opposition needs to be respected and worked with, even though it's challenging. Defensive opposition usually indicates that something else is going on that needs attention. Let me share a story that really illustrates the difference. There was a 3-year-old girl who suddenly started saying no to everything her parents asked her to do. At first, her parents assumed this was normal toddler behavior and tried various discipline strategies. But the opposition was so intense and persistent that they started to worry something was wrong. As they worked with Winnicott, they discovered that this little girl's oppositional behavior had started right around the time her grandmother had moved in with the family due to illness. While the parents thought their daughter was handling the change well, she was actually feeling very overwhelmed by the disruption to her routine and the new emotional dynamics in the house. Her constant no wasn't healthy developmental opposition. It was her way of trying to regain some sense of control and predictability in a world that suddenly felt chaotic and uncertain. Once her parents understood this and provided extra support and reassurance during this transition, the extreme opposition began to subside. This brings up something really important that Winnicott taught about how to respond when your child is in an opposition phase. The goal isn't to eliminate the opposition or force compliance. The goal is to provide what he called a containing environment, a relationship that can hold and support your child's developing sense of self without being threatened or overwhelmed by their assertions of independence. This means staying calm and steady when your child says no, even when it's inconvenient or frustrating. It means recognizing that their opposition isn't a personal attack on you or a sign that you're failing as a parent. It means finding ways to honor their growing autonomy while still maintaining the boundaries and structure they need. Practically speaking, this might look like offering choices within limits. Instead of saying, "Put on your shoes, we're leaving," you might say, "We need to leave in 5 minutes. Would you like to put on your shoes first or your jacket first?" This acknowledges your child's need for autonomy while still ensuring that necessary things get done. That might also mean picking your battles carefully. Not every hill is worth dying on, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do is find ways to say yes to your child's assertions of independence, even when it's not convenient for you. For example, if your child refuses to wear the outfit you've picked out, and you have time and flexibility, letting them choose their own clothes can be a way of supporting their developing autonomy. If they refuse to eat the dinner you've prepared, you might offer a simple alternative rather than turning mealtime into a battleground. This doesn't mean becoming a permissive parent who never sets boundaries. It means being strategic about when and how you set those boundaries, and always keeping in mind the developmental work your child is trying to do. Winnicott also discovered something fascinating about the emotional dynamics of opposition phases. He found that children often become more oppositional with their primary caregivers, usually their mothers, than with other adults. This can be really hard for parents to understand and accept. You might notice that your child is perfectly compliant with their teachers, babysitters, or even their other parent, but they save all their opposition for you. This can make you feel like you're doing something wrong, like other people are better at managing your child than you are. But Winnicott would tell you that this is actually a compliment in disguise. Your child opposes you the most because they feel safest with you. They know somewhere deep in their developing psyche that you're the person who will love them unconditionally, even when they're being difficult. Other adults in your child's life might get compliance because your child doesn't feel secure enough with them to risk showing their true feelings. But with you, they feel safe enough to practice being their authentic self, even when that self is challenging. And OPPOSITIONIL. Understanding. This can help you feel less frustrated and more honored by your child's behavior, even when it's driving you crazy. You're not failing as a parent. You're succeeding so well that your child feels completely safe to be themselves with you. Now, let me talk about some specific strategies Winnicott recommended for navigating opposition phases in ways that support your child's development while maintaining your sanity as a parent. First, he emphasized the importance of staying emotionally regulated yourself. When your child says no to everything, it can trigger your own feelings of frustration, powerlessness, or even rejection. But if you respond to their opposition with your own opposition, getting into power struggles, raising your voice, or becoming punitive, you are likely to intensify the very behavior you're trying to change. Instead, try to stay curious about what your child is trying to communicate through their opposition. Are they feeling overwhelmed and need more control? Are they going through a developmental leap and need more autonomy? Are they feeling disconnected from you and need more attention and connection? Sometimes the best response to no is simply acknowledging your child's feelings and preferences before moving forward with what needs to happen. You might say something like, "I can see you really don't want to brush your teeth right now. You wish you could keep playing. And we still need to take care of your teeth before bed. Should we make it a game, or would you like to do it really quickly?" This approach validates your child's autonomy and feelings while still maintaining the necessary boundary. It shows them that you respect their personhood, even when you can't give them everything they want. Winnicott also recommended looking for opportunities to say yes whenever possible. When you're in the middle of an opposition phase, it can start to feel like every interaction with your child is a battle. But if you can find small ways to honor their preferences and choices throughout the day, it can reduce the intensity of their need to oppose you on everything. Maybe you let them choose what color cup they want for their milk, or you let them decide which book to read first, or you give them control over small decisions that don't really matter to you. These small yeses can help fill your child's autonomy tank, so they're less likely to fight you on the things that really do matter. Another strategy Winnicott suggested is reframing opposition as information rather than defiance. When your child says no, instead of immediately seeing it as a problem to solve, try to see it as communication about their inner experience. Maybe their no is telling you they're feeling rushed and need more time. Maybe it's telling you they're feeling overwhelmed and need the day to move more slowly. Maybe it's telling you they need more connection with you before they can handle direction from you. When you can respond to the message underneath the opposition, you often find that the surface behavior becomes much more manageable. Let me share one more story that really illustrates the long-term benefits of supporting children through opposition phases with patience and understanding. There was a mother who went through an incredibly challenging phase with her 2-year-old son. For several months, he said no to everything: getting dressed, eating, bathing, going to bed. The mother was exhausted and sometimes wondered if she was raising a future tyrant. But she had learned about Winnicott's perspective on healthy opposition. So instead of trying to force compliance, she worked on staying calm and finding creative ways to honor her son's growing need for autonomy. She offered choices. She made things into games. She acknowledged his feelings, even when she couldn't give him what he wanted. It was hard work, and there were definitely days when she questioned her approach. But gradually, as her son moved through this developmental phase and felt secure in his growing sense of self, the intense opposition began to fade. Years later, this mother realized that the patience and respect she had shown during that challenging phase had laid the foundation for an incredibly strong relationship with her son. He grew up feeling confident in his own opinions and preferences. But he also learned that relationships work best when people can negotiate differences with respect and creativity. As a teenager, when many parents are struggling with defiant behavior, this young man was able to disagree with his parents respectfully and work with them to find solutions to conflicts. The early investment in supporting his healthy opposition had paid dividends throughout his development. This is the long-term vision Winnicott wanted parents to keep in mind during those challenging opposition phases. You're not just trying to get through the day or get your child to comply with your requests. You're helping them develop the psychological foundation they'll need for healthy relationships and strong self-esteem throughout their lives. When children learn early that their thoughts, feelings, and preferences matter, when they experience having their autonomy respected, even in small ways, when they discover that they can disagree with people they love without losing those relationships, they develop the confidence and relationship skills that will serve them forever. So the next time your child says no to something simple, like putting on their coat or coming to dinner, try to remember that they're not just being difficult. They're practicing being themselves. They're testing whether you can handle their authentic self. They're learning crucial lessons about autonomy, relationships, and their own worth. Your patient, understanding response to their opposition isn't just about managing behavior in the moment. It's about helping them become confident, emotionally healthy adults who know how to stand up for themselves while still maintaining loving connections with others.